I remember being at the doctor's office. I was like 36 weeks pregnant, and my doctor was like, do you think that you are going to breastfeed? Is the plan to breastfeed? And I was like, yeah. And always, like, anytime she asked me, I would say yes. But in the back of my mind, I was always kind of like, I don't know that it's gonna work out for me. About a month before I gave birth, this cat jumped across me and scratched my nipple and like put a hole in it, like gouged a hole in it. And it was so painful. And I remember being like, oh my God, I'm giving birth in a month. What is this? Like, how is this gonna go? Okay, so fast forward. I give birth. I'd never held a baby before. Like, I didn't know what I was doing holding this human in the first place, right? And so somehow I had to like maneuver it so precisely and like get the perfect latch, right? Nobody tells you how hard it is to get a latch. And we never did. We never got a good latch. But I remember being in the hospital and just being like, somebody help me. Like, one of you nurses, like, come here and tell me how I'm supposed to do this. And they kept trying, and I kept being like, this doesn't feel right. Like, they're like, it's not supposed to hurt. And God, looking back, I'm like, why would you tell me that it's not supposed to hurt? Like, something is like trying to extract milk from my nipple for the first time ever. Of course it's going to hurt. I felt like my basis for breastfeeding, like I didn't have a good base. Sorry, I didn't sleep last night. So thinking of the words to describe what I dealt with, obviously is gonna be kind of difficult today. But I didn't have like a foundation, that's the word I was looking for. I didn't have a solid foundation for breastfeeding because the nurses in my hospital were not helpful, right? So I didn't have anyone in my life who could help me with that either. Like, I just went home and was just kind of on my own to figure it out. And my latch was wrong. It continued to be wrong, and it continued to cause more problems. I did see a lactation consultant in the very beginning, a couple days after giving birth, because Olive was underweight at her like first appointment after the hospital. She was underweight already. Shocking. I'm not shocked knowing what I know now. So they sent me to see a lactation consultant after that to make sure that everything was right. And we were working on like latches and stuff, and everything felt like we were gonna get it figured out, right? And then I went home and I still had problems, and she would cluster feed, right, for up to 7 hours. I remember one day we cluster fed for 7 hours. Not normal. That's not normal. She was crying, absolutely inconsolable, so hungry. And she was dehydrated too. Like, her lips were so dry. She was sunken in up here, you know, all the signs of dehydration. And everyone is just like, stick it out, right? Like, you have to kind of give your body that time to adjust. You have to give your body that time to build up the milk supply. But from the very beginning, my body was not making enough milk. It was because I didn't have that solid foundation, right? I didn't have like, it's not like my body just doesn't make milk, you know? And a lot of people will say that when they come across an issue. But the problem is that I didn't have the support that I needed, and I didn't have the people around me who could help me figure out how to get my supply up. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. And because of that, we were constantly facing supply issues. I only breastfed for 2 months. I was barely sleeping. Obviously, of course, when you have a newborn, you're not sleeping, but also I wasn't eating, and I wasn't switching back and forth between sides for every feed. So I would feed a full feed on one side and then put her down, go to sleep, right? And then a full feed on the other side, put her down, go to sleep. And for me, for someone with a low supply, I should have been feeding on both sides, and I just didn't know that I should be feeding on both sides like every single time. Very early on, decided to bring in formula because one, my supply was just an absolute complete mess, right? And two, I needed Tanner to be able to do at least one feed so that I could get some amount of sleep, because I was just not coping. I wasn't okay. I wasn't pumping enough because I wasn't making enough. for him to give her breast milk, right? So we started at about, I think she was like a month old when we started doing just one formula bottle. And I remember being really nervous about it, but feeling okay about it because it just felt like the right move for us. And I found a formula that I really love and appreciate, and I will talk more about that formula at the end of the video, because making the decision to turn to formula for me, a lot of that came from like finding a formula that felt good to give her, because I don't trust formula companies. So I remember there was this one day, she was about like a month and a half at this point. And I remember there was this one day that we were just cluster feeding all day long. And she was hungry. She was just like endlessly hungry, restless, wouldn't fall asleep. And I was at my wit's end, and I was like, I'm just gonna give her formula. Like, I'm just gonna give her formula. You know, everybody says, let them cluster feed. Like, you don't want to give formula because that will just mess with your supply. But it's like, when you get faced with a hungry, starving child that needs more than your body is producing, you know, you're faced with this, and you have to make that call. You have to make that decision. And I was like, I don't think my body is supplying her with what she needs. I turned to formula, and I remember that day so well. I will never forget when I gave her the bottle and she relaxed for the first time in her life, and she fell asleep. I never looked back as far as being okay with giving her formula. Up until that point, Tanner had been the one giving her the formula, and anytime I was feeding her, I was feeding her, you know? And going forward, I was okay with giving her formula because of that experience, and knowing that my body clearly was not supplying her with what she needed, or that moment would not have happened. Going forward, I just felt okay with giving her a bottle, and slowly I was giving her more bottles. I was pumping more. I was trying to keep up with like building some sort of a supply. But at about 2.5 months, I think, I decided that I was just gonna quit. I was just gonna call it on breastfeeding. And so I did. I completely quit. And I didn't have to do any sort of things to reduce your supply, because I didn't even really have a supply, right? So everybody's like, there's all of these like tips and tricks to like make your supply go down. And I just quit, and I didn't have any sort of problems. No clogged ducts, no nothing. Like, my body was just like, this wasn't working for us in the first place. We're done. And that's that. A month later, I was like, okay, I'm feeling better about this. I'm gonna try to just kind of pump and kind of keep up like a minimal supply, so she can get like at least the antibodies out of my milk. So I started pumping it again. I was pumping like every 2 hours during the day, not pumping it all at night, because that sleep was really important to me. And then just pumping throughout the day. And I was able to get like about 5 ounces every day, and that felt really good to me. I wasn't trying to like rebuild my supply. I just wanted to give her, you know, the like extra nutrients that comes from breast milk that you can't get from formula. And so we did combo feed for a few months at that point, and that felt really good to me. Combo feeding felt so good. It was like, I can pump, I can breastfeed, I can give her what she needs, but then also I can turn to formula if I need to. And then I got sick. I got a cold. She didn't get the cold, but I lost my supply. It was gone, absolutely gone. I was pumping after all of that work that I had done over the last couple of months to like bring my supply back. It was gone, and I was pumping dry again. And at that point, I think she was like 5 months old at that point. I was like, okay, like, I'm just gonna call it. I'm done. And I packed up all of my pumping supplies, and I gave them to a mom that was giving birth. And I had bought I had 3 different pumps at this point, four pumps if you count like the Medela manual pump. And I was putting everything into it. I was trying my hardest. And yeah, I just had to just pack everything up and give it away so that I could just like let that part of my life go, because I was like, I really grieved. I really grieved the loss of breastfeeding. It wasn't something that I wanted to give up. I just remember being absolutely in tears for days for days. And I know that a lot of that is actually hormones, because when you wean, no matter what, like there is like a grieving process. I think no matter whenever it happens, your body like grieves that. So yeah, breastfeeding was a very, very difficult journey for me. And I didn't expect it to be hard, but it was hard. I found a formula company that I'm just obsessed with. It's a female-owned business. It's a mom-owned business. It's a mom-focused business. It's a subscription service, so you never have to worry about running out. Okay, right. I haven't even told you the name of the company, right? I think it's probably going to be in the title, but it's Bobby Formula. It's a subscription, so it shows up at your door, and when you sign up for the subscription, which I actually think that you can't do it right now because they have too many babies already. But when you sign up for a subscription with Bobby, they guarantee enough formula for the first year of your baby's life. So you don't have to worry about any sort of formula shortage or anything like that. I feel great about the ingredients. I feel great about supporting this company. And something else that I really love about Bobby is they have like a branch of the company called Bobby for Change. And they do stuff like lobby in Congress for paid maternity leave, like 12 weeks of guaranteed paid maternity leave through the federal government is what they're working on right now. And I think when it comes to the breastfeeding conversation, like people don't really talk about the fact that because we don't have support, first of all, most moms are home alone because their husband has to go to work immediately, right? That was my situation. So I didn't have any support. I didn't have anyone helping me. I was all alone. And breastfeeding takes a village because somebody needs to be taking care of the mother. And if nobody's taking care of the mother, it's probably not going to work out. And that's a part of the conversation that people really ignore. Right? When it comes to children, when it comes to raising children, people ignore the mother all the time, right? People ignore the needs of the mother because, fuck her. Basically, I feel like is how society kind of views the mom. But if the mom doesn't have support, then how, if nobody's helping her, how is she going to support the baby to the full capacity that she can? Having to go back to work immediately after giving birth, 6 weeks, you're not even fully healed at 6 weeks. I can tell you, you're not fully healed at 6 weeks. And then your hormones are fluctuating for the next 2 years and you have to go back to work. You have to go back to work and you have to pump and you're disconnected from your baby. That disconnection from your baby, that affects your milk supply. There's so many things in our society, in our life right now, in this nasty capitalist, sorry to go for capitalism, but honestly, it's one of the reasons that we have these sorts of issues. It's a lot on a mom's shoulders, and some moms are well supported and well taken care of and are really able to breastfeed, and I think that is amazing. I think that is beautiful, but the world that we live in genuinely doesn't support breastfeeding, and that's ignored and that's not talked about. And if we're not talking about that, if we're not paying attention to that, then we're not gonna we're not gonna have higher breastfeeding percentages, numbers, whatever the word is, I can't think of it. We're not going to have that if we're not focused on supporting mothers and figuring out why mothers are struggling so hard to breastfeed in our society. What's causing that? Why are we not asking that question? If I were to have another baby, which I'm not planning on it, but if I were to have another baby, my intention would be to breastfeed. And knowing what I know now about breastfeeding and creating a good supply in the very beginning, I think I would be successful. And that's what hurts so much sometimes when I think about breastfeeding, is that if I would have just been armed with the correct information, if I would have known more, and if I would have known that I needed to know, right? Because I didn't even know that there were going to be things that I needed to know that I wasn't going to know. So if I had known the things that I know now, my daughter would have been breastfed. And that's what I struggle with so much. And I'm happy with how things turned out. I'm happy that we found a formula that I feel good about. But if I had the opportunity to do it again, I would do everything in my power to not lose the ability to breastfeed. And I know it's not my fault. There were a lot of things stacked against me, but armed with the information that I have now, if I were to have another baby, it would be different. And I know that. And so it's just kind of hard to process that. And it's painful because she's the only baby I'm gonna have, and I lost that with her, and it sucks. But it is what it is. And I just feel lucky to have a formula company that I feel like I can trust so much. And I don't have to feel bad about having made the decision to breastfeed her. So that's our story. I just kind of dumped all of this. So I don't know if I left some things unanswered. So if I did leave something unanswered, I'm like a little bit sleep deprived. So definitely ask questions, put things in the comments, have a conversation, but as always, be respectful and kind and loving, because we need as much of that in the world as we can get. So thank you guys for being here. I love you so much. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.